China is a key partner of African nations in terms of trade and investments. But Beijing is now expanding this partnership into the defense sector as well. Now, this trend is clearly visible in the Sahel region, where Chinese weapons and artillery have been making their way. In the latest, Burkina Faso's armed forces have received a fresh consignment of Chinese-manufactured armored vehicles and artillery pieces.
What if I told you that a single signature could rewrite Africa's destiny? What if I told you that in the heart of West Africa, one of the poorest nations on Earth just secured a $50 billion deal that could flip the balance of global power? Burkina Faso, a landlocked country often ignored by the world, has just shocked the globe. Under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young revolutionary soldier turned president, this nation has partnered with none other than China in a deal that could transform finance, agriculture, and the very future of Africa. Western powers are rattled. France is in panic. The IMF is furious. But for the people of Burkina Faso, hope has never burned brighter. Tonight, we take you inside the $50 billion shockwave, the deal that could make or break Africa's independence. Burkina Faso woke up to a new reality. For decades, it had been one of the poorest nations in Africa, with little to no global economic influence. But suddenly, in 2025, everything changed. Reports confirmed that China and Burkina Faso had signed a massive $50 billion agreement. The deal wasn't just about aid, or loans, or symbolic gestures. This was direct investment, money that would flow into finance, agriculture, infrastructure, and industrialization. The numbers stunned observers. $50 billion. That's more than the combined GDP of several African countries. For Burkina Faso, whose GDP hovered around $20 billion, this was more than double its annual economy, injected overnight. Citizens cheered in Ouagadougou, waving flags of Burkina Faso and chanting Traoré's name. Farmers in the Sahel region couldn't believe it. Tractors, irrigation systems, solar-powered pumps, all promised under this deal. Young entrepreneurs saw the possibility of access to new credit, modern banking, and even digital finance systems. But while the streets of Ouagadougou were filled with joy, the halls of Paris, Washington, and Brussels were filled with alarm. The IMF quickly issued a statement warning Burkina Faso of unsustainable dependence. France, the former colonial ruler, called it a dangerous partnership that undermines international norms. Yet the reality was clear. Burkina Faso had turned east, and it wasn't looking back. For Traoré, this was more than just economics. It was about sovereignty. We will never be slaves again, he had declared months earlier. And now, with $50 billion on the table, he had the means to back up those words. Behind this deal lay a story of secrecy, strategy, and bold defiance. The talks with China didn't happen overnight. Insiders reveal that negotiations began quietly in mid-2024. While Western media dismissed Traoré as just another military leader, Beijing saw something different. A young, determined man with a Pan-African vision. Chinese envoys arrived in Ouagadougou under the radar. Meetings were held not in luxury hotels, but in government offices and secure military compounds. Traoré insisted, "This is not charity. This is partnership. We want technology, training, and investment, not handouts." The Chinese agreed. Unlike the IMF, which often attached strings of austerity, Beijing offered long-term financing tied to projects, railways, power plants, irrigation networks, and agricultural modernization. One insider revealed, when the IMF comes, they tell you to cut salaries and privatize water. When China comes, they ask, how many tractors do you need? How many roads must be built? It was this practical approach that sealed the deal. By late 2024, the outline was clear. $20 billion into agriculture tractors, irrigation, fertilizers, research centers, mechanization. $15 billion into finance creation of African-owned banks, digital financial systems, microcredit for farmers and traders. $10 billion into infrastructure roads, bridges, solar farms, energy grids. $5 billion into industrial zones processing plants for cotton, gold refining, and food industries. The Western world was excluded. France was furious. For decades, it had treated Burkina Faso as part of its backyard. But Traoré had slammed that door shut. In a fiery speech, he declared, "Burkina Faso does not need masters. We need partners. If the West cannot accept this, they should step aside. Africa is not for sale. Africa is for Africans." The boldness shocked many, but it also inspired millions across Africa. From Dakar to Dar es Salaam, people saw in Traoré not just a leader, but a symbol of defiance against centuries of exploitation. This is where the deal truly matters, on the ground, in the fields, and in the markets. Agriculture revolution. Burkina Faso is a nation of farmers. Over 80% of its population works in agriculture, but most still use basic tools, no irrigation, and depend on rainfall. Yields are low, poverty is high. But now, with $20 billion earmarked, the game is changing. Tractors and harvesters arrived in convoys. Irrigation systems spread across the dry Sahel, turning arid land into fertile fields. Rice, maize, cotton, sorghum, suddenly productivity skyrocketed. Farmers who once made barely enough to eat were now producing surpluses. With Chinese technology and training, they could compete in regional markets. Traoré's government promised that no farmer would be left behind. Village cooperatives were formed, with credit extended to buy equipment. Women, long excluded from major land ownership, were given equal access. The dream was simple but powerful. Burkina Faso as the breadbasket of West Africa. Finance revolution. But agriculture cannot grow without finance. For decades, Burkina Faso's banking system was weak, controlled largely by foreign institutions. Farmers had no access to loans. Small businesses collapsed for lack of credit. Now, $15 billion was flowing into finance. New banks were established, owned jointly by Burkina Faso and Chinese investors. Microloan programs targeted rural communities. Digital payment systems, powered by mobile technology, connected even remote villages. For the first time, ordinary citizens could dream of opening accounts, saving money, accessing credit. One farmer told State TV, "All my life I worked the land, but the bank refused me loans. Now, I have a tractor. I have irrigation. I can dream for my children." It was more than money. It was dignity. The shockwaves spread across the world. France called it a threat to democratic values. The IMF warned of unsustainable debt. The US expressed concerns over transparency. But ordinary Africans were unmoved. On social media, hashtags like #AfricaRising and #TraoréVision trended. Memes showed tractors plowing fields with captions like, "IMF never gave us this." Mali and Niger, Burkina Faso's allies in the AES alliance, praised the deal. Ghana and Botswana quietly expressed interest in joining similar negotiations. The idea of an African bloc of independence was no longer a dream. It was happening. In China, state media celebrated the agreement as proof of South-South cooperation. The West, however, saw its influence shrinking. One European analyst admitted, for decades, Africa was forced to turn to the IMF or France. Now, with one deal, Traoré has shown there are alternatives. This is a geopolitical earthquake. What does this mean for Africa? Traoré is not just thinking of Burkina Faso. He is thinking of an entire continent breaking free. The deal aligns with the vision of the AES alliance. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso forming a united economic and military front. With billions pouring in, this alliance could expand. Imagine a West Africa with shared infrastructure, one digital currency, and food self-sufficiency. No longer begging for aid, but trading on equal terms. Traoré declared, "This is not about Burkina Faso alone. This is about Africa. If we succeed, others will follow. Together, we can rise." As night falls over Ouagadougou, new streetlights powered by solar energy shine across the capital. Farmers gather around their fields, no longer dark, but glowing with irrigation pumps. For the first time in decades, hope feels real. $50 billion may just be numbers on paper, but in the hands of a determined leader, it becomes something else, a weapon of freedom. Ibrahim Traoré has taken a gamble. Some call it dangerous. Others call it visionary. But one thing is clear, Africa will never be the same. The world is watching, and the question remains. Will this deal make Burkina Faso the symbol of Africa's rebirth? Or will global powers crush this dream before it takes root? One thing is certain, The age of dependency is ending, and the new era of independence has begun.
African Spotlight 24, your premier source for news and current affairs from across the continent. We're glad you're here. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe, like, and turn on notification to stay up to date with the latest news and analysis. Your support helps us reach more people. Disclaimer: the content of this video is based on credible, publicly available information and is intended for educational, analytical, and informational purposes only. African Spotlight 24 does not promote hate, violence, misinformation, or political unrest. Our goal is to deliver thoughtful insights, highlight local voices, and encourage informed conversations throughout Africa.